What are some of the top 5 frequently asked situational questions in a Scrum interview? And how can you answer them with examples? Remember, when it's a situational question, they expect you to illustrate this answer with a real life example. In this video, we are going to talk about 5 situational questions and how you can respond to them confidently with some examples. What are these 5 situational questions we are going to deal with today? Number 1, how do you handle a situation where the development team does not agree with the product owner prioritization of the backlog? That's number 1. Number 2 question we're going to deal with today: what would you do if a team member consistently fail to complete their assigned tasks during a sprint? Number 3, we are going to respond to the question: how would you handle a situation where the product owner continuously add new features to their backlog during a sprint, causing disruption to the team work? Number 4, what would you do if a stakeholder requested a change to a feature that was already in development during a sprint? And number 5, how would you handle a situation where the team is struggling to deliver the sprint goal due to unforeseen technical challenges or dependency? All right, so there is a lot to handle in today, but before we go ahead, welcome to the Scrum chat room with Dr. Francis Mbunya. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button because I am committed to bring you value that we draw you closer to your agile journey. For those who need help and want to close that gap in the market, we are opening up to get you in a real and practical environment where you don't just only do Q&A, but you have an opportunity to be part of a Scrum team and this build your confidence towards landing your first job as a Scrum Master. And of course, we always running certification training. Okay, without wasting much of your time, let's get into the business of today. The first question: how do you handle a situation where the development team does not agree with the product owner prioritization of the backlog? Okay, now responding to this question, it's in 2 dimensions. Number 1, they want you to understand, they want to understand if you understand what prioritization is all about. And number 2, they want you to give a scenario on it. So the way I will respond to this question, thank you very much for this question. Now, in a situation where the development team doesn't agree with the product owner, I already see a discrepancy in collaboration. What happened in my environment is that we have a backlog refinement meeting where the backlog is continuously refined. Now, the product owner in my team has the sole content right and is the person collaborating with the customer and know exactly what the customer needs. So normally it's not a place of the development team to decide how the backlog will be prioritized. Now, the development team can collaborate with this. In a case where the development team in my organization is not clear about the prioritization, we bring up suggestion to the product owner, and the product owner can only adopt this suggestion if the customer agreed on it. Remember, Agile, it's a customer-centric approach. And we don't just go because of technicality, we also go because of how the customer wants us to deliver the increment. So I have not really had a scenario where there is a big disagreement in my team between the prioritization technique or the prioritization approach of the PO and that of a team. But in case this happens, what I'm going to do is I'm going to facilitate a conversation between the development team and the product owner and ensure that the product owner can throw more light into the rationale of this facilitation and help the team understand why it needs to be prioritized this way. So remember, this is a scenario where you cannot say, oh, I have had this scenario before, because the development team is not responsible in prioritizing. The product owner is the sole person responsible in communicating with the stakeholders and then informing the prioritization. In a case where there might be a misconception, it might be that maybe the product owner is not communicating effectively with the stakeholder, which as a Scrum Master, you can facilitate this conversation and understand exactly what is the problem. Now, let's move to the second question. The second question says that, what would you do if a team member consistently fail to complete their assigned tasks during a sprint? All right. So, two ways to approach this question. Number one, you want to start by analyzing what might be the problem. And number two, you definitely want to give a scenario that you address when it happened, which I'm going to do in this question. So this is how I'm going to respond to this question. Thank you very much. If developers do not or consistently fail to complete the assigned tasks during the sprint, I am suggesting that there is something wrong with the developer. So I have had a scenario like this, and I noticed that one of my developer consistently wrote some stories over and over again. And I did a couple of one-on-one follow-up with them. And in my one-on-one, what I was trying to understand is what is holding them back from completing the work that they committed to. And in all of these cases, they consistently assured me that they are going to complete it. It's just about a couple of work to be done. But I noticed that despite the fact that they reassured me that there was no major problem and they are going to complete it, they keep rolling it over and over again. Now, and this was really affecting the way my team worked. So I escalated this problem to my Agile coach. My Agile coach had a one-on-one with a team member and also trying to find out what was the major problem. But it turns out that they did not really give any clear reason why they could not do that. So it was kind of really difficult to help this team member. But then it got to a point where we needed to escalate it to management because it was becoming toxic for the other members of the team. And when management came down to me and asked if I could show them the evidence that I have been collaborating with this team member to find out what was going on, and I was able to share some of our conversation we had in our teams on how these team members have responded and the number of times I've been able to follow up. And I also show them all the time when I have a conversation with this team member, I always document in the comment section of the story that the team member has agreed to complete by this period. So with that, management also had a session with them and gave them a couple of time, but it was evident that something was wrong and they were not willing to open up for anyone to help them. So management has to let them go. So in a scenario where the team member collaborate, what I definitely do in most of the cases is to be able to redirect them, be there for them, help them. If they need some constant follow-up and reminder, then I'm going to be there for them. Another example I had, which was not an extreme example, I had one of my developer who was actually going through some challenges. Then when I did a close follow-up with them, I realized they were having some challenges with their head. So sometimes they really find it difficult to really complete their work on time. Because of that, I stay in constant communication with them, check up, make sure that they're taking frequent break. I always send them tips on how to balance work and their head. And because of that, the support they got from the team, they really, really bounced back and they were able to recover on time. So just the love, the fair within the team was enough for them to stay up. So this is how I've been able to handle such a situation in my team before. So the question number 3 says that, how would you handle a situation where the product owner continuously add new features to the product backlog during a sprint, causing disruption to teamwork? So for this question, the first thing to understand is that it's not advisable to add scope during the sprint, because psychologically you agree with me that when someone brings work out of a sudden when you're already focusing on something, it's a bit disturbing, which is the reason why it's advisable not to add work in the middle of the sprint. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. One where it's possible, and the second one where coaching might require. So thank you so much for that question. Now, I had a scenario like that, but then the reason why scope kept on changing was because we were working on an MVP and the requirements were not so clear. And in most of the cases, since the requirements were very volatile and changing constantly, I had to mentally prepare my team to understand the situation that we were still collecting new requirements from the customer. And because it was a new product and much clarity wasn't really there, there are bound to be a lot of changes. And my team actually understood exactly what was going on. So in this case, they were prepared to shift around things in most of the cases. But one thing I also did at that moment to ensure that we had a bit of stable focus in the future was that I had frequent meetings with my product owner to find out if they're having some new requirements, if they're expecting any changes in less than no time. In that case, I always kind of kept encouraging my team and staying in communication with them to expect a couple of changes. And just this awareness kind of really kept them balanced. All right. So the second scenario, now, if the product owner keep changing requirement in the middle of the sprint without informing the team member, which is a situation I've definitely not handled. But then this is what I'm going to do in this case. Now, the first thing which I suggest it might be happening, I see that there is not clear collaboration between the stakeholders, the PO, and the team. So because of this, we do not expect, we're not aware of what changes are really coming in. And this can really disrupt the team. So one of the things I try to do to avoid a scenario like this is I work with the product owner and ensure that most of the time we plan our sprint 2 level deep. And also, I create an extra session with the PO just to have a conversation. Where can I help? Is there our backlog is intact? Is there any way I can step in and help? So just this mutual collaboration in most of the environment that I have worked have been able to really create a balance where we have not seen so many changes. We have not seen so many anti-patterns, just because I try as much as possible to use my communication ability to balance any challenges that might be coming our way. Okay, so one of the things you're going to notice the way I answer is that there is no unique right answer. And in some of the questions which are really situational and require you to give like really, really real life example, the first thing I always advise to do, in most of the cases, you can give a disclaimer. And the disclaimer would be like, oh, I've not really been in an environment with so much unforeseen changes like that. But this is what I would do in this case. And these are some of the causes of this scenario. So that approach definitely gets you to the right answer. Question number 4. What would you do if the stakeholder requested a change to a feature that was already in development during a sprint? All right. This is a very important scenario. I remember I was working on an MVP with my team, and we have already gone like halfway. And then the stakeholder requested, which was the stakeholder in this case was the manager, the stakeholder requested that they no longer want to host all the data in the in Postgres, and requested that the team move all the data from Postgres to DynamoDB. This was already, the team has already done quite some work in Postgres, and this was a change that came in the middle of the sprint. So what we did is that we immediately stopped work because this was a very important change that require us to implement for the customer. We immediately stopped work and we had a KT session to discuss and see if our team actually understand the Postgres, the DynamoDB environment, and also discuss what are the possible stuff that need to be done in order to prepare the environment. So this KT session actually opened up the team and create an environment for that shift. So because of that, we're able to implement that shift without any challenge. Now, let me give you another scenario. Let's say that you're working on a real future. And let's say that, for instance, we work on a future that requires the bookmarking all the pages that were already in development. And in the middle of it, the stakeholder requested that we need to take out all the bookmark and replace all the bookmark that were there with the logo. Now, this is a change in the middle of the future. Now, what happened is that, number one, we take out our requirement, and also I seek to talk to the stakeholder on why do we need to do this change and how is it contributing to the business value, right? And when I spoke to the stakeholder, they told me, okay, the bookmark that were used there was already part of another project. And they wanted to kind of really create this one uniquely. When they had a support meeting with the client yesterday, the client wanted really something unique and not related to what they have read before. So because of that, we needed to hold on in implementing all the bookmarks across the portals that we're building and replace the bookmark with a new logo that was provided by the client. So because I understand why these changes was very important to the customer, I needed to work with my team, coach them on why this is important. And also, in most of the cases, what also happened is that I always reassure my team, especially when we have retrospective, on the concept of Agile, which is customer-centric, and prepare their mind that most of these changes are always going to come on board. But when they come on board and I know on time, I always get in a conversation with them so that they can implement that without any challenge. Right. So couple of stuff to note about this question. The first thing is that you educate or you seek to understand why is this change. And then if the change is important, yes, we are going to do it. What we simply do is that we reprioritize our backlog. If it's a change that is going to replace completely what we're working on, we do what? We do a complete swap. If it's a change that it's only like an add-on and we still need to work on what is we're working on, and the change is a priority, we prioritize the backlog and then start working immediately on what actually came in. Now, in cases where there was this story in the to-do column, which we have not started, we can actually send those back to the backlog, right, before we continue with this one. But if the team was already working on different items, I will not definitely have them send them to the backlog because they need to take credit of what they were already working on. I will leave them there, just reprioritize them, and then you pick up with a new work. Okay, and the last question number 5 says that, how would you handle a situation where the team is struggling to deliver the sprint goal due to unforeseen technical challenges or dependency? All right, so I'm going to talk about dependency first. Now, when we talk about dependency, what this means is that there is something that is holding the team back, right? Now, If it's within the same team, it's more about prioritization, right? It's more about it's more of a blocker. Okay. When it's external, it's more of a dependency. All right. Let me give you an example of a dependency. When you work with a support team, this is a key example. Support teams are shared services in most of the Agile team. Support teams are like DevOps engineers, like a security team, like a system teams or so. So we had a scenario where the support team which was specifically was the work of the DevOps engineer, had to deploy an environment that enabled my team to work, because my team was working on a very highly sensitive issue that needed some security check to be done before they could proceed. So my the DevOps engineer that was in charge and collaborating with my team needed to deploy give all developer access to Snake. Now, Snake, it's an application that can be used for a security check or so. But then the DevOps engineer was swarmed with work because other project had to go on releases, and they were really swarmed with work on that project. So when we reached out to the DevOps engineer and requested for that access, the DevOps engineer had about 96 tickets on their list. So because of that, they could not get to us within the next 2 sprints. But then we kind of prioritize the backlog and then kind of see that this is going to take us a very long time. So escalated to my manager, explain the situation to my manager. And because we also needed to do our own release and do MVP presentation to our customer, the manager also went ahead and escalated it up. And a DevOps engineer was deployed from another branch to specifically come in and support our team to ensure that all the developers have access to Snake and were able to complete the story on time. All right. So the other scenario I had about a dependency that actually slowed down my team, I had 2 team members that were working from India, and then they were unable to connect to the VPN of the company, and because of that, there were certain applications that they could not have access to because they did not have secure connection. So what I did is that I escalated this to my manager. I actually slowed down our work for about a sprint, because most of these developers now could not work on security ticket or ticket that require any security access. So I escalated this to my manager. My manager immediately contacted the collaborating headquarters in India, and they had new laptop sent to these team members. Within 1 week, they were able to get it and reset it. And it actually slowed down our work, but because of that intervention, it got us very close to completing the work. So in a nutshell, the way I handle dependency, it's about strictly communicating, documenting, and following them up, and make sure that they are addressed on a timely manner so it doesn't limit our work. All right, so those were 5 situational questions. But then if you're interested, not just to listen to this situational question, but to be in an environment where we have several teams collaborating, and you can actually see some of these challenges while you are preparing for your interview, go ahead and check the link below and sign up for our community of practice and our interview preparation. And definitely, we are ready to hold your hand to the end. Okay. Thank you very much, and I see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, don't forget to drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.